He's a tough street-fighting lawyer with the highest ratings for honesty and integrity. He's here to answer your legal questions and get you the help you need. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Joe Ingram has more than 20 years' experience fighting for his clients here in the state of Alabama. Joe's focus is criminal defense and family law. You don't have to face your legal issue alone. You've got Joe Ingram on your side. In case of sensitive legal matters, you can always reach out directly to Joe at joeingramlaw.com and arrange for a private consultation. And now, Alabama's defender of the defenseless, protector of the people, and all-around good guy, Joe Ingram.
All right. This is Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram, your Birmingham lawyer. Listen to WERC 105.5 in Birmingham, WBHP up in Huntsville, and WRTR in Tuscaloosa. We always appreciate you listening to the show. We enjoy you being a guest of our show. We ask you to listen, like, download, and share the podcast. I know that somebody's doing it out there because our podcast downloads reached an all-time high in the last week. And some of that may be related to the guests that we had. But the show is growing, and we are climbing in the polls of podcasts in the state of Alabama. We're getting there. As always, you can reach the show by going to the iHeart Radio app on your phone, whether you're listening to us during JT, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Michael Berry, any time of day. All you got to do is say, this is a message for the Legal Lowdown. You can reach us and talk to us. As always, the featured sponsor of the Legal Lowdown is Spy for Rent. Spy for Rent is the only name you need to know in the state of Alabama. Jeff Hammock, Corey Fuller are by far the two best investigators in the state, and they are the exclusive partners of my firm. And today we are lucky because Jeff Hammock is in the studio because we are going to do our monthly little spy stories. And Jeff's here.
Hey, good morning, Joe. How are you?
Hey, Jeff. How are you, man?
Well, I'm tired. It's been a long week. How are you?
I'm pretty good. So most people don't know that you and I have this little ritual. I check in with you every day between 3:30 and 5. We just like to update each other on our days. Yeah. Sometimes it's 2 minutes. Sometimes it's a 10-minute conversation.
Yeah, I call it my 6-minute time with Joe.
Yeah.
6 minutes with Joe. That's all I can afford.
6 minutes with Joe. And we talked about some things we want to talk about today. Is there anything particular where you want to start?
I'm hiring. We need help. We need work. People to come to work.
Okay.
We're like you, Joe. You need that extra attorney in the office from time to time so you can go do more.
Okay.
And we have grown. And then after merging with Corey into the partnership that we have, we've grown even bigger. And our litigation support section is hurting for people.
Okay. So if anybody's out there interested in getting into the private investigation industry, reach out to Spy for Rent. Go to the website, look them up. Reach out to Corey Fuller and Jeff Hammock, and you might be able to get employment with them.
Oh, you will. Yeah. If you've got transportation, a warm body, and a heartbeat, we're going to put you to work if you can.
Okay.
And now that's not going to be on the investigation aspect of our platform. It'll start with the process service and then move on depending on where you want to grow in the company.
Okay. What you want to talk about today, Jeff? We got a couple of subjects. Where you want to start?
You pick it. You've got the main mic.
Okay. So, we talked about this the other day in the car. I get a divorce case, and we think that one or the other spouses has some information on their cell phone that is instrumental for custodial purposes or proof of infidelity, for alimony, things of that nature. And I go file a motion with the court to get an order from the court in order to do a cell phone forensic search of the cell phone. And I asked you the other day because you don't work just for me. You work for every lawyer in the state of Alabama. You have all my competition. Even though we don't talk about it, you have all my competition against me. And I said, Jeff, is there ever a situation where somebody has gone to the judge, got an ex parte order, and what that means, folks, for those that are not listening out there, ex parte means that just one-sided went to the judge, got probable cause to prove that it was necessary to get it at the time that they filed the divorce complaint. That's all that means legally. And I said, Jeff, do you ever get the divorce complaint to go serve with the cell phone search order to do it at the time? And what was your response to me?
Well, we will get the preservation filed by the lawyer. Most times we will show up at the hearing if there's a hearing set, and then do the extraction there. But one of the corrections I need to give, it's not just a cell phone. Most of our clients are going into this because it's still a relatively new, frequently asked for, right? It's starting to pick up on the horizon for a lot of preservation, a lot of discovery methods. But it's not just the device. I mean, we did an Xbox this week because you can communicate apparently through those devices. And there are other means. So when you say a cell phone, then you're probably cutting it short. We would say any electronic storage, media device, or communication device.
My bad.
No big.
Right.
We got it.
But you missed what I just asked you.
Well, now,
so go ahead. All right, go ahead.
Well, you tell me what I said, Joe. We talked that 6 minutes, and you are fast and furious on it. So tell me. I don't remember, honestly.
Do you ever get the order at the time of you serving the divorce complaint to search the cell phone at that time?
No.
And what was your answer?
I don't remember.
You said, if I'd showed up your house to try to search your cell phone,
that's right.
Go ahead.
No, the reality of it. Sometimes there's unrealistic expectations that people have, and if I showed up at your house with a piece of paper that says you're getting a divorce and now you have to give me your phone, I just don't see that happening. It's a hearing. You gentlemen and ladies, the lawyers, go before the judge and get what you're asking for, right? You get the order, and then the order is produced. Opposing counsel will usually turn around and say, they're here now. Do you mind waiting? And that's a problematic issue also, because you don't know what devices to bring, right? You may just bring your cell phone. But again, if you're asking for all devices, you've got to go home and get the Xbox, or you've got to go home and get the tower or the laptop or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the cell phone is just one thing, but another dive into that is Facebook, for example. See, if you ask for an image of the cell phone, we have to do something different to get the Facebook dump. So it's more in how you structure your motion, your request, than what we're limited to then. The more you ask for, the more we can go and look at. But no one's going to give me their phone standing at the front door. No.
Well, they might. They don't. You never know. They might.
I will say, it's not. We have served, as you said, ex parte. There's been PFAs. There's been changes of custody that were taken without the parties on the other side being notified, right? And we have shown up at the front door to say, you need to go pack a bag for your child. They're going to stay with their dad. And that, I can talk them out of their kids, but I can't talk them out of their phone. There's something about that.
Yeah. And more often than not, if I know it's going to be an issue in a case, for example, let's say my client hired you before they actually hired me to investigate infidelity, and I know that's going to be a big issue in the case, either for custody or alimony or things of that nature. You know this. When I file my complaint, I will write a preservation of evidence letter to serve with the complaint, and I'll make it a part of the record, so it's part of the court file. And you'll serve that on the defendant so that hopefully they don't go delete. And we talked about this the other day. Their cell
Poor
phone.
Corey.
Yeah.
Poor Corey.
Yeah. Right?
Go ahead.
I mean, do other lawyers do that too?
Yeah.
You send the preservation of evidence letter too?
Some do.
Some
Again, New Horizons, not all of them are on the edge like you're doing. There are other attorneys that do it. There's some that just don't think the divorce warrants that, right? There's no allegations of infidelity or hiding of assets or something that would require that type of research. And the other thing to keep in mind is, tell me if I'm wrong, but if Joe Ingram asks for something, does Joe Ingram's client also has to comply with it? If you ask for a drug test or a forensics evaluation or review, imaging of a device, would you then have to tell your client to come and do it also?
Only if they ask for it. And in my limited experience, started doing a lot of cell phone searches, forensics. I haven't had anybody ask for my client's cell phones to be searched. Now, I always tell them before we do that, if you open Pandora's box, in litigation, you could be subject to.
Yeah.
As far as asking for a drug test, unless there's some kind of merit to warrant it, I'm going to be standing there in front of a judge arguing, saying, show me the reason for the necessary to do this. And then again, if you've got nothing to hide, go in there and take the P test and be done with it. So.
No, you're missing a service here, Joe. We need to test something else besides the urine. Do you know how the dope works in the body? A little bit?
A little bit.
Right, okay, so pick your drug of choice. You do it today. If you do it now, right now, in this hour of the radio, in 20 minutes, it's going to show in your bloodstream. A little bit later, it's going to show in your urine, right? Week later, it's going to show in your hair. But 120 days from now, none of those other tests are going to show you as dirty. But we have a test that we can show where you're dirty from 120 days prior. Our company goes, one of the things we can do, and we do really well, is going back into history and surfacing this information. So imagine we're sitting around, we do the drug of choice, our doc, and have you ever had one of those times when you hurt your thumb, your toenail, and you get that blood spot, blister, and it takes months for it to grow out? Well, as we said earlier, it goes into the urine, it goes into the bloodstream. The bloodstream equally feeds the fingernail and toenail beds from your quick at the very top all the way back to your knuckle. It feeds up and out. The nail bed grows up and out. So the byproducts of the dope go into the bloodstream after usage and digestion by the body, and it's pumped into the nail bed. And as your nails grow out, you are continuously dirty until you grow a new set of nails, fingers, or toes.
Okay.
So that's how we drug test. If you want to go down and get a urinalysis, that just means that you weren't dirty in the last couple of days. If you want to know for a custodial challenge if they're dirty, yes, we have that. That's a yes or no. It's just like a light switch. You're either dirty or you're not.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. And I had a case last year where one of the parties was accused of using cocaine, and they did do the what do you call it, under the fingernail swabs.
You can
forgive
the clippings is what you want to do.
Okay.
You test the clippings,
and that goes further back
yes.
than just in the bloodstream and the urine, things like that.
Yes.
And then we also have the hair follicle test as well.
It dates back further than the hair follicle. And someone who and you can't tell me you haven't had the person show up to court who's completely shaved their body to keep from giving a hair follicle test. So those happen. This has been around for probably 25, 30 years now.
Yeah.
The ability to test from that.
Okay. Very good. All right, so that talks a little bit about forensics of electronic searches that Spy for Rent does. Let's talk a little bit about the issue of due diligence and some of the new things that Spy for Rent is offering as a service.
Well, due diligence, our research side is really growing. We base, I think, some of this concern based on some of the money that corporations are losing. I think it was ABC that just had to cancel a show because they failed to find a domestic violence in someone's background. We had the same issue come across my desk probably 3 weeks ago. Someone was inquiring. There was a marriage. And shortly after the marriage, there was either an arrest or there was some kind of registration this individual had to do regarding a sex crime. And the new spouse had no idea of it. And it didn't surface here in Alabama. It didn't surface on our national searches. And the only way we found it was through a federal case filed in some other district in the United States where he was actually charged with the crime, but there was no state certification anywhere. Couldn't find it.
And you said y'all found this after the marriage?
Yeah.
All right, so...
Well, she was looking for, I think, any reason to validate this, and maybe a company had done some work or looked, but they never found it. And I would have looked at the data and without going the extra steps that our policies require, would have probably said, hey, it's falsely accused. This didn't happen. It's a misidentification. It's what it looked like on the surface. But after digging a little deeper, you see where he was actually charged.
Yeah. Do you know if that person decided to end the marriage based on your work product?
I never got the answer. I don't get these circle backs on how things end. I get a question, will you answer this? I answer it. I catch them doing whatever we observed or surface whatever data the attorney asked for, but they never tell us where they win or lose.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay.
You're the only one that gives me follow-up. I get to hear your current arguments.
Well, our daily phone call. Okay. So I want to talk about something that you brought up the other day when we were having a conversation. You had a case in your purview about legal property and falsification of a notary seal.
Yes.
And we were just having our little daily conversation. And I was like, well, wait a minute. This is a really big story related to notary bonds. And for most people out there that do not understand, when you sign a legal document that requires a notary seal signature, the person that is a notary is supposed to keep a record book of you signing their book, of them showing your license to them to identify yourself. And they write down, whether it was a driver's license, whatever document that proved I'm Jane Doe, I'm John Doe, and they put that information in their book, and they keep a log to show that you signed the legal document that they put their notary seal signature on. And you said, Joe, we think we've got some forged documents. And I said, well, Jeff, most people don't know this. If you have a notary seal, there is a bond that's tied to the notary seal up to, depending on the transaction. Most notary seals start at $50,000. And in today's world, for legal transactions, notary seal bonds, for all intents purposes, can go up to $1 million or $5 million for a notary seal bond. Mm-hmm. So if the transaction is bad, it's just like car insurance. That notary seal bond, you're entitled to the value of that transaction to be made whole if it was fraudulent.
It's going to be a fraudulent transaction, most likely. I'm inconclusive in drawing my finals on it. I haven't finished the interviews yet, but most likely what happened was, as they say, this individual may have moved homes or moved or done something or had some choices in life that set them back. Somewhere in there, they may have lost their stamp. They may have just someone found it, right, and took care of the documents, as we'll just call it that, and she had no knowledge or he had no knowledge of it. But it's an outright. I think we're going to draw that it was a fraud.
Yeah. And so we were talking, and I said, let me tell you about a divorce case. This is probably about 15 years ago. Somebody filed for divorce, filed for a uncontested divorce, and you'll see.
Give that. Let's just walk that through, and then let's go back to how easy an uncontested divorce can ruin your life later on. But go ahead. Okay.
So let's say you come in to my office and you say, I want to file for an uncontested divorce. I say, good, great. There are a lot of lawyers out there in an uncontested divorce will allow you to bring in documents that your spouse has signed and notarized by a third party that I have not seen, and they will file them with the court to get you a uncontested divorce. And the trouble with that is, let's just say the party got a divorce and they come back 4 or 5 years later, the other spouse, and says, I just found out that I'm divorced. I never signed these documents. And they said, yes, you did. Here's your signature. And they go, I never signed these documents. Tell me who the notary was that notarized my signature to authenticate me.
Same as this lawsuit here.
And it wasn't true. And if you do a divorce in my office, even if it's uncontested, we always make the other spouse come in. We get proof of their identification. We make a copy of it. We scan it to the file. We put you in the notary record. And when we file the legal documents, I know that I'm covered, that you are the person that claims to be on that piece of paper.
That's right. And to get it that easy, someone walk in with just a stack of documents, show their ID, file for a divorce. Excuse me. It's that easy. And so how do you know? You find out through your tax returns at some point. You get hit by the IRS. How did she find out?
I think in that case it was tied to some legal property. And I think they made a claim for an estate, or they made a claim against some legal property. And they did some research, and it says, hey, you're divorced. And they were like, no, we never actually got divorced. There are a lot of people in this world that don't take care of their legal affairs. There are people that separate from their spouses and don't ever get a divorce for 10 or 20 years. And then they finally come back and they think there's low-hanging fruit there. Hey, I never got a divorce. My spouse died. I want to file a claim against the estate. And I think that's how the person found out in that case. So.
That's a hard day. That's a hard article to wake up to, right?
Well, it's equally hard. I told you that the lawyer involved and the notary person involved in that case, there was a file against the notary bond, and I think the lawyer got disbarred for filing fraudulent legal documents with the court.
We see it in sewer service, on process service all the time, where somebody will just sign the return saying they served the individual, file it, and move on. And I've always thought that process service, the way the rules are written right now, where anyone in Alabama can do it, and again, that's what we're hiring for, that needs to be changed to some form of certification. It ought to have, much like a notary, some type of bond. We've seen where they've gone back and overturned awards. And you got to think about that for a minute. If you've been awarded $400,000 in a divorce, and now you're going to have to get some of that back, if not all of it, because you were never properly served.
Yeah, we're going to go to news and weather. We're talking with Jeff Hammock, Spy for Rent. We'll be back after the news and weather. We'll be back.
You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Joe is a 20-year veteran of the Alabama courts specializing in criminal defense and family law. If you need a private legal consultation, email Joe at joeingramlaw.com. And now, welcome back to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram.
All right, we're back for the second segment of the first hour of The Legal Lowdown. Joe Ingram, your Alabama lawyer on WERC 105.5, WRTR in Tuscaloosa, and WBHP in Huntsville. We're talking with Jeff Hammock today of Spy for Rent, our exclusive sponsor of the show and my firm. Always, if you need legal representation in the state of Alabama, joeingramlaw.com. joeingramlaw.com is all you need to know. Before we went to the break, we were talking about notary seal issues and bonds. And, Jeff, I'm going to tell the story that I was talking to you about on the phone the other day. There was a case in the last 2 years where somebody had a notary bond, and there are people that advertise that they do notary signatures. This really scares me. And so this person met a person in a parking lot and said, I'll notarize some documents for you. And the person had their mother in the car with them. And it turns out that the mother either had Alzheimer's, dementia, some kind of cognitive impairment in that she wasn't in her full mental capacity. Let's just say it that way. And it turns out that one of her children brought mom, put her in the car, and said, hey, I want you to notarize all these signatures on these documents. And what they had drafted up was transferring all of mom's real property. And what I mean by real property, I'm talking about houses, land, things like that, to him, the only sibling. And the notary person, not doing their job, not knowing any better, he goes over to the notary person. He says, hey, that's mom in the car. I'm over there. I don't want to get her out. You know, she can't walk. But that's her. That's her over there. Okay. And she signs and stamps all these documents giving one of the children all of the legal assets. Fast forward a couple of years, mom dies. And I think there's 3 or 4 children. And the children are like, okay, we're going to get our inheritance now. No, you're not. It all belongs to me. Mom gave it all to me. There's no way my mother would cut me out and not give me one house. I want to see the documents. They look at the documents. Kind of looks like her signature, Ford's signature. They go, who's the notary that did this? And it turned out that the value of the real estate property was in the neighborhood between $4 to $6 million.
Wow.
And they said, Mom wouldn't do this. And so it became a federal criminal case. And the one sibling that initiated these fraudulent legal transfers was criminally indicted. And so the person that had the notary bond seal called my office and said, hey, an FBI agent just called me and wants to come by and talk to me. And I said, well, what did you say? And she said, well, they asked me some questions about some signatures that I signed, and I vaguely remember it. And she said, it concerns me. I said, well, anytime an FBI agent calls you or shows up at your door, that is a reason to be concerned. Anyway, she comes in, and I interview her, and I talk to her, and I thought, yeah, you might have some legal exposure here. And I asked her, I said, do you keep a transaction book of every document that you sign for the person's signature to validate it, to authenticate it. She said, no, I don't. And I was like, okay, this is not going well. And I called the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I said, are you after my client? Are you really after one of the children? And they said, we're really not after her, but, it doesn't sound good. And I said, I tell you what, I said, if you will give her total immunity, she'll come in and testify and tell you exactly what happened. And really, they just wanted the son. They knew they could get the property back, fraudulent transfers. So we go down, we meet with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney, and she tells them exactly what happens. And we get a proffer letter from the government that she's not going to be prosecuted. She's going to be given immunity as long as she testifies truthfully. And we had to go to federal court, and she testified against that person, and he was found guilty for fraudulent legal transfers of real property related to his mother. So food for thought out there.
Always know what you're signing. Always have a lawyer put their eyes on it.
Yep.
Even though there was a lawyer that got in trouble for the same thing you were talking about earlier, where somebody got a divorce and they didn't know they were getting a divorce.
Yeah. So another thing I want to talk about with you today are called PFAs. PFAs, Protection from Abuse Orders. And this is where a lot of divorce cases start, Jeff, are PFAs. Or if they don't start with the PFA, once we go file the divorce complaint, a PFA comes relatively shortly.
Well, it probably starts a year or so before the PFA, but we won't go back that far. If you're at the point you're getting a legal document, you backtracking is no big deal. But yeah, they come and they're easy to get. I think you would nod your head and say a PFA, a restraining order. You just have to say something and sign the paper. And I don't know a judge. I have not seen too many judges, let me rephrase it, where they've said no, right? We always err on the side of caution. We always err on the side of caution for children, right, that are in the home. The allegation can be kind of severe. It can be kind of minor from he came home, she came home drunk. I mean, we were talking earlier about the Bachelorette. I think all she did was throw a chair. I mean, I don't know if she hit him or not. She just threw the chair. It's irrelevant in the state of Alabama whether you hit him or not. Your intent was to cause alarm and concern. But, I mean, the ABC lost $70 million over that one.
Yeah. So let's say, my client comes in and we're about to file a divorce complaint. And during the course of my interview, I always ask them, do we have any physical abuse? Do we have any verbal abuse? Things of that nature. And sometimes they'll start telling me, well, there has been physical abuse in the last year or so with me and my spouse. And I'll say, well, tell me the details. Tell me, I have to know everything. And sometimes it rises to the level to me. Now, I'm not one to use PFAs in a divorce case just to get somebody out of the house. That's not what I like to do, or in a custodial case. But like you said, the courts pass out PFAs now like they're candy. Oh. And the reason is because no elected judge in the state of Alabama wants to wake up on Monday and there be an article on paper, AL.com, or something to that effect of husband kills wife after she filed for divorce, and she also filed for a PFA, and the judge denied it. Right. She's dead, details at 5.
That's right. And if you don't get it in one, you go to another courthouse.
Well, that's possible.
Possible.
And so, sometimes I go with my client to file a PFA. Sometimes I don't. It depends on the client if I feel like they are articulate enough to do this on their own. And also, I don't want to waste my time either. And a PFA petition it's a check the box primarily. It asks lots of questions. It'll ask you such things are, did your spouse do one of the following? Threaten to confine you. In other words, keep you from leaving the house, from feeling safe. Made you have sex by force. Did they kidnap you or the children? Did they torture or willfully abuse you? Did they, injure you in any way, bodily? Did they threaten to hurt you? In other words, did they say, I'm going to shoot you the next time we get in an argument? There's all these boxes you can check. And then there's a paragraph 3 where you can write a narrative. And I always tell my clients before you get to the courthouse and do this, because the judge is actually going to read the PFAs. The judge actually reads them, the duty judge. I'll say, go home and write out a very good chronology, type it, print it, and just attach it to the PFA, because it'll be better than something that you handwrite at the courthouse and you're not prepared for.
Exactly. And nobody can read your handwriting anyway.
Yeah. And now every county is different, Jeff, in the state of Alabama. A couple of judges in Jefferson County, if I file a PFA, if I go to them and I say, hey, we're filing the divorce at the same time, sometimes the judge will give me the PFA and say, Joe, your person can go serve it for time and effort instead of the Jefferson County Sheriff.
Right.
Shelby County, more often than not, is going to be the Shelby County Sheriffs. But they're really fast about doing it. No. Shelby County is much better than Jefferson County.
A lot faster. A lot more expedient. Jefferson County can be up to 3 and 4 weeks before you get service perfected. And that's on a good schedule.
So do you and Corey serve a lot of PFAs?
We go out at the moment that it's filed that we receive it. Again, a PFA, a restraining order, and you talk about the difference in those, but those are the hot button issues at the moment of the day, right? It's not your typical small claims case where we're chasing down a credit card debt. This is someone's family, someone's safety, someone's children. There's some type of turmoil. And unfortunately, people don't have 2 houses to go to and separate, so someone has to be the custodian of the children in the home. A lot of these result, I think, from, as I said, things that happened a year ago in the marriage, but they are influenced from either the drugs or the alcohol or some other aspect external to the marriage, an affair, for example, right? Those create a lot of stress in the house, you would think, but they create the stress on the individual having the affair, and that spills over into the household. Before long, there's an argument, and they're backed into a corner, verbally, not necessarily physically, and they lash out and push. Those are when we go to the door. We knock on the door. We tell the individual, you got a lot of boxes checked on this piece of paper. Don't violate it. You'll go to jail. Have a great day. Good luck.
And when you do that, Jeff, just like when an officer gets called to a domestic violence call, I've talked to enough police officers, and you have too as well. I am told that when officers go to a domestic violence call, they're more concerned about that than almost anything else because they don't know what they're walking into. The 911 person on the phone is asking lots of questions. Does either one of you have a gun? Does either one of you have a knife? All those kind of questions, right? So for you or Corey going out serving that kind of document, are you always, I know you're always packing, I know you're always concerned. Are you really concerned in those events of what you're about to walk into?
Of the hundreds of documents that we serve, TROs and PFAs are the only documents I read. I don't care about your divorce. I don't care about your small claims, but I'm looking to see how many boxes they checked. I'm looking to see about firearms, obviously. But for the most part, if it's that strong of a paper, they're either, or a filing, they're either in jail from the domestic violence that occurred the day before that they were arrested on, and we can get that PFA because we walk them. They're walked through a lot of times by the lawyers, and we can catch them in jail where it's a lot safer. A lot of times they get released from jail, but there's been enough conversation going on among the family members in a domestic issue where that individual knows they're not coming back home. We catch them somewhere else. But for those type of papers, I prefer what we call the ambush. We're not gonna show up at your door and have a quiet conversation with you. We're gonna catch you when you're coming out of the jail. We're gonna get you when you're in the jail. We're gonna get you when you're coming out of your place of employment, right? Because we can control that environment right up to the aspect of where the individual is armed or not. We don't show up in vests and guns and order people to the ground. Again, it's civil service, but those right there have a lot of repercussions that go along with it.
And people are really emotional right then.
Very. Well, you would think, you just spent 12 hours in jail because of something that you're not going to say, I just slapped her. Yeah. Right? You're going to defend it. So, yeah, it's always a divorce has its emotion, but those, and tell me the difference before we get too deep. What's the difference between a TRO and a PFA?
Well, one is a temporary restraining order preventing you from doing something, either
returning to the home, having custody or time with your children, removing money from the bank account, something like that. And then the PFA is slowly to keep you from getting slapped around, right? But it also removes you from the home. It also prevents you from having visitation. It also prevents the same things that the restraining order does, right?
Right.
They're all confusing. I don't understand.
Well, I don't know I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to put you in that position.
Go ahead, well.
Do you feel like do a lot of people ask you legal advice when they get served with those kind of documents, or do you just give your pat answer of you need to get legal representation?
I think it depends on the severity of the case. The PFAs always get my tagline, and restraining orders, those get them, just because somebody's being a butt about things, right? Just it doesn't have to go that far, really and truly. In a relationship, there should be no need for a PFA, right? You should not. But yet we have those relationships and those documents get filed. I typically am pretty stern, right? Shorter words, don't violate. I'm not going to go over the check boxes with you. I'm not going to read all this to you, but you just probably need to do exactly what those documents say. If it says leave the house, you leave the house, right? Because the next ones that come back will probably put you in jail.
Yeah. So that leads us to a conversation we were talking about off air. So you got to serve a new case for me about a week or so ago. And I'm not picking at you because it's not you. Things happen. I mean, it's life.
Well, no, it's not live. Yes, it is. It is live, but we're going to let John here be the judge and jury on this one. And I have to offer my case first. You see that piece of paper over there on his desk? It just has a name on it, right? It has a name and address. It doesn't say what anything, right? And so when we get extra information from the lawyer, it's really exciting. Like, we knew this guy's one of 3 trucks he would drive. We knew where he worked, and we even knew that there was this two-colored sign that said a business on there, right? And it was at the back of this building. So Jeff shows up because we got to have this. Joe promised him the moon. It's got to be done the next morning. I show up at this business. There's my 2-colored sign right there. There's the vehicle. Now, I didn't run the tag. Didn't have to. We don't normally run the tags unless there's an issue with service. Those are extra dollars.
Can you run tags? You're not a police officer.
We can run tags.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can run. Short of seeing what the police have in NCIC, what they communicate about, we can see everything. We can see, in a lot of cases, vehicle cameras on this road. There's a lot of things that we, through our license, have access to. But yes, sidebar, I can run tags. Anyway, so I show up at this business. I've got this divorce complaint, and I go in and I say, "Is your name Joe?" And he says, "Yes, my name's Joe." I've got the sign. I've got the car. I've got everywhere I'm supposed to be. There's nothing missing from my ingredient list, right? I've got everything I need. And I get the guy this papers, and he looks at me, and he says, "That's not me." And I said, "Yeah, whatever. I get that a lot, buddy." And he says, "No, it's not me." I said, "Well, what's your name?" He said, "Well, my name's Joe, but it's the wrong Joe." And I said, "Well, do you know him?" He said, "Nope." And I'm getting the cold, right? I'm not getting any help from him at this point.
Was his last name the same?
No. It was a different last name, but we didn't move past the first name. I was a little running on, I've got a vehicle that looks like it. I'm at the right building. I'm in the right place. I've got Joe over here that's acknowledged it. And he hands me back the papers, and I'm like, I ain't playing this early in the morning. You're not avoiding me just by lying to my face.
We thought he was avoiding service.
All right. So I just laid him down and walked off. It didn't take an hour. And his staff takes a cussing from some guy named Joe, right? And I'm like, but I got him. That was him. Here's the tag, right? So we run the tag, and it's the wrong last name. It's the right Joe, just the wrong last name. And what I missed was right next to that two-colored sign that said where I was supposed to be was one about 30 feet on around the other side of the building that I didn't see, and another entrance. Even told me, "You have a rolling bay door right next to the entrance door." Right? So I am 100% convinced I'm in the right, no, wrong one, wrong Joe.
Did the wrong Joe give the correct Joe a heads up that, hey, some guy's going to be coming back with some papers in about an hour?
Actually, he apparently did, because the right Joe, when I walked into the correct shop to serve the correct Joe, was on the phone with his lawyer. I could hear him on speakerphone having a conversation about what to do. And I didn't want to be privy to this conversation. And they're making no bones. He can't see me. He doesn't know I'm in the shop. And I was finally like, "Hey, Joe, this is going to be something to do with that conversation you're having right now. Why don't you pause it a minute?" Well, I can tell you all about the strategy, Joe, what they're planning on doing in opposition to this. Okay, I know you don't.
Point being, and I try to be pretty good about this. I try to give you what they look like, what kind of car they drive. You know, we try to give you a time frame of when you're going to try to get them, right?
Yeah.
The more information that you're given by the lawyer when you go serve the documents, better chance is that you're going to get them at that time and place.
Well,
can you trespass when you sue?
No, I'm not going over a fence. If it's locked, you're going to get a pretty little envelope hanging on that gate or that whatever.
There was a story a while back, and I forget who it was, where a process server showed up to deliver papers, and the lady was pulled into her driveway and drove her car into the garage, and the process server walked into the garage to give her the papers, and that became a big issue because he entered the domicile to deliver the papers, as opposed to
politician and
outside.
his wife, right? Yeah,
Yes.
That was a big ordeal in the discussion of what you should or shouldn't do. The gentleman that did it was from Atlanta. He wasn't familiar with the area. He was just paid to.
Okay, we're talking the same story.
Yeah, same story. Process service is usually a flat rate serve. You really make your money on the hourly serves, and this guy was getting paid to come from Atlanta. He staked out the house. He saw her come home, I think, from church or something, and just flew in the driveway behind her. And when she got out, he ran into the garage. Right? Okay. First rule: when UPS, Amazon, all these people start chasing you, that'll be the day I chase you to give you the papers. I'm here. You're here. The papers are here. You're served. Where he messed up is he went on in what we call the threshold rule. You never cross a threshold. If it looks like a door, it's a door. Don't go in. Don't. I can't tell you how many mobile homes we have in Alabama have that screened-in front porch. That's technically a threshold. You can't go through that screen door. I won't. If it's a locked gate, we'll leave you a note. Otherwise, we'll be sitting out there when you come out of the gate or go in.
Very good. Well, we got about 2 minutes left, Jeff. What else you want to talk about for your spot?
I'm hiring. we need help. We're hiring. I started it with that, and I'm ending it with that. Corey
Well,
has so many other things he wanted to say, but we're hiring.
I'm going to start working part-time for Spy for Rent soon. So,
You think so?
well, I'm going to apply. I don't know if I get hired, but I'm going to apply.
Joe, you don't want to sling papers, buddy. I promise you.
Why not?
You just don't want to sling papers.
Yes, I do.
It's not something. This is a job where an individual will make their own, set their own limitation in income earning. Because you see, I mean, we have a volume. We work for a lot of lawyers. We can give you a lot of work.
Well, I'm still applying.
Come on.
We had our monthly Spy for Rent stories with Jeff Hammock and Corey Fuller, Spy for Rent. They're the names to know. We'll be back at the top of the hour after news and weather. Stay with us. All right.
Thanks for tuning in to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Don't forget to follow Joe's Legal Lowdown podcast on iHeart. If you need a private legal consultation, reach out to Joe on his website, joeingramlaw.com. Tune in again next Saturday for the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by any other lawyer. He's a tough street-fighting lawyer with the highest ratings for honesty and integrity. He's here to answer your legal questions and get you the help you need. You're listening to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Joe Ingram has more than 20 years' experience fighting for his clients here in the state of Alabama. Joe's focus is criminal defense and family law. You don't have to face your legal issue alone. You've got Joe Ingram on your side. In case of sensitive legal matters, you can always reach out directly to Joe at joeingramlaw.com and arrange for a private consultation. And now, Alabama's defender of the defenseless, protector of the people, and all-around good guy, Joe Ingram.
All right, we're back for hour 2 of the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram, your Birmingham lawyer, on WERC. WBHP up in Huntsville, and WRTR in Tuscaloosa. As always, we'd like for you to listen, like, download our podcast, share it with your friends and family, become a part of our weekly show. We like feedback. The show is getting some pretty good traction. We've had really good guests the last couple 2 to 3 months, and we do this for your benefit for the election. As always, our featured sponsor of our show is Spy for Rent. Spy for Rent is the name to know in the state of Alabama for legal investigative services. Jeff Hammock, Corey Fuller are the only names you need to know. As always, if you need legal representation in the state of Alabama, just look me up, joeingramlaw.com. Joeingramlaw.com is all you need to know. Huntsville, Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Mobile, we can provide representation to you. National legal news of the week. We're going to start with a really good story. We're going to talk about Artemis 2. This is a very, very good story. Because it's been, how long has it been, John? 40-something years since we went to the moon? Something like that. More like almost 60. Thank you. That's a long time ago. And if you've seen the pictures the last week that they have taken from behind the moon shooting back at Earth, that is so cool. And for the first time ever, the south pole of the moon, I'm told, has been looked at and explored, and that's where they're thinking they're going to put a potential base, if you will. They think they might be able to produce water there to get us to the next step, which is, I think, Mars. And it's just been so fascinating looking at these pictures the other day. I spent probably an hour just looking at photos from Artemis. And there was one photo that was really interesting. They think it looked like a rat or a mouse or something on the surface of the moon they think there may be something living up there. Not really sure. Then again, it could be just a rock. They said they weren't sure, couldn't tell, but it looked like something. It looked like a living organism to me, moving on the surface of the moon. But can you imagine the difference between 60 years ago and today, and the type of photographs we took? It is just phenomenal. And as a national story, it's exciting to know. And so that is just a story that I'm glad to talk about. We beat China back to the moon, and according to Elon Musk, they're going to put a space station up there. So that's a story that we're going to be watching over the next coming years. National legal news this week: Ketamine Queen. Have you heard of her? Matthew Perry, Friends star, the guy that died from drugs. Ketamine Queen is the lady that was giving him ketamine. It's a drug. And she was sentenced to 15 years in prison. And, this falls into the category of stories of, you think about the doctor that gave Michael Jackson, what was it, propofol, and he died in his house. I think about the doctors that were around Elvis Presley. And the other reason I'm referencing this story is last week, if you'll remember, Tiger Woods flipped the car up on its side. I really don't know how it landed directly on its side. I'd really like to know that. And supposedly he may have some issues with his pain addiction medication that he's used, because I think he's had roughly 30 surgeries. And what is troubling about all of these stories is that someone becomes so famous or so rich, and there's no one around them that has the guardrails up to protect them. Oh, and by the way, Britney Spears, she got arrested a couple weeks ago again, I think, for a DUI. Am I right on that? Yeah, I think so. But the sad thing is these people become really rich, they become really famous, and then there's nobody around to really protect them. They're all yes people because they're either getting paid or they want access or they want something from them. And that is the danger, and that is the sad part of the Matthew Perry story, is that this person was giving him ketamine, and I think he died in his hot tub, if I remember correctly. So that is the sentence that she received. Next case I want to talk about, the Gilgo Beach serial killer, Rex Heuermann. We've been discussing how to say his name. I may have butchered it. He pled guilty this week for the murders related up to up in New Jersey. If you remember this story, he was arrested approximately 4 years ago. He was an architect in New York City. He was 62 years of age. He was married. He had a family. What happened is approximately 7 women started disappearing, and then they found them, and they were all, I believe they were all prostitutes, and it was a cold case. They had nothing to go on, and sure enough, the DNA technology on the rope, I guess around their throats or some part of their body, they were able to extract some DNA. And so then it somehow or another got tied to this gentleman that's the architect. And so then they started, getting some search warrants, and they started following him and checking him out. and they follow him to his office in New York, and they laid a trap for him. He ordered a pizza, and when he threw the pizza box out in the garbage can, they got a search warrant, and they searched what was left over of the pizza crust, I guess, and the DNA from the pizza box matched what was on the rope that had been buried in the sand. And from there, bing, bang, boom, they arrest him. For 3 years, he proclaimed his innocence, said he had nothing to do with it. They searched his house. They tore his house apart, probably found all kinds of stuff related to the case. Anyway, he pled guilty this week in court. And it was really sad to watch. I felt sad for the victim families. I felt sad for his family. He was married and had 2 children. And here is what is different about this case versus the case in Idaho where the guy pled guilty last year that murdered the college students. He just pled guilty, and he didn't say anything, how he did it, nothing happened. This time the judge was adamant that he wanted some factual basis of what happened to accept the guilty plea. And he literally admitted that he strangled all 7 of these women and how he did it. And all of the women, all of the facts were similar in nature, how he did it. And part of the plea agreement that I found really fascinating is that he has agreed to be interviewed by the FBI, to give multiple interviews. They want to interview this guy to track him to see what makes somebody commit such heinous crimes, become a serial killer. What leads you to do that and hide your steps so well for a long period of time? So that is a case that I'm going to continue to follow for me, because I'm just curious what makes somebody do that. By all intents purposes, he was successful in his life. He was an architect. He was a professional. What makes you go do something like that? It probably has to have something to do with his childhood, more often than not. I think we're going to find out. And we were talking off air. I think this puts him in the category of BTK, bind, torture, kill, that gentleman. There's a number of these people that we've seen throughout history that are just, for whatever reason, they are not wired properly, and they commit the most serious crimes. This is a really big story. This is a big story because it's a national story, and it also has a state component to it. Up in Nashville this week, they are allowing Muslim students to be excused from class to go pray for Ramadan. And that's on the national level. Well, here is the state component. The Alabama state legislature this week, if you follow the news, they just passed it. They are going to put the 10 Commandments on the November ballot. So when you vote, turn over to the back of the ballot. Nobody ever reads these, John. Nobody knows what they mean. Nobody knows the verbiage. If you don't know what it means, most people just say no. But on this one, you might want to say yes. So if you vote yes, they're going to put the 10 Commandments back in the schoolhouse, and we're going to be able to have prayer in schools. If Muslims can have time to go pray for Ramadan, why in the world can we not have the 10 Commandments and prayer in the school when this country was founded on Christianity? Makes sense to me. And I'm not a religious zealot here. They're going to treat this as the 10 Commandments as a historical document. And that's fine. But all I'm saying is, if we're going to make exceptions for Muslims or other faiths that are not what this country was founded upon, why in heaven's name are we not taking time out to recognize our country and what it was founded on in a schoolhouse? That's all I'm going to say about that. So if you vote this year in Alabama, please turn to the back of your ballot, look at where it has the constitutional amendments, and vote yes to put the 10 Commandments back in the schoolhouse. I just thought that was very interesting this week. And it just passed the other day by the legislature. I think it passed on Thursday. And by the way, they just finished their session. They're gone. They're gone home. They're getting ready for the primaries. They're out of session. They're done. But they did take care of that. And that brings me to the next story that we got to talk about, what the legislature did and what Kay Ivey just signed and what I've been preaching about for about the last 8 weeks, if you've paid attention to our broadcast. They did it. The Alabama Public Service Commission has been 3 people since it was started. Not anymore. They just passed a law, and Kay Ivey just rubber stamped it. I don't even know if she knows what she signed at this point. She's going to get to nominate 4 people to be on the Public Service Commission. So now we're going to have 7. We've just opened Pandora's box. And, they've made all these arguments that they're trying to protect us, the voters, from Alabama Power and making sure we have rate public hearings to justify their rates increases. No, this is a bill and this is a power play by Alabama Power and Southern Company to control the Alabama Public Service Commission. That's what this is. Nobody fought hard enough to call their legislatures, their House representatives, their state senators to say, don't do this. Nobody listened to me. You might regret this in a year or 2 from now, and you're going to say you heard it here first. But it happened this week. We have just gone from 3 public service commissioners. We're going to have 7. The new 4, I'm told, have to be appointed by July, I think, if I read it correctly. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be entertaining. And we're going to see what happens with that. So some other big news I thought was interesting this week. We talked about the Meta trial where they got sued about kids spending too much time on social media platforms. Well, guess what? Facebook is now going to have to face a trial in Massachusetts related to the same thing. This is just going to be just like the tobacco industry. It's coming. You might as well just go ahead and call it a class action lawsuit somewhere, and they're going to pile on. And I told you how I feel about this. I'm against this. At some point in life, you have to be responsible for what you do or what your children do. Do not blame big corporation because your children spend too much time on social media. Another story that was interesting this week, the United States Supreme Court dismissed the case against Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon worked for President Trump during his first administration. Steve Bannon refused to testify before Congress. They held him in contempt of Congress. They referred it to the DOJ for prosecution. He was prosecuted. He served 4 months in federal prison. And his argument was he had immunity because he was entitled to executive privilege with conversations with the president. And they said, nope. He went to prison. He was found guilty. He did his time. He appealed it. The Supreme Court just set it aside. He shouldn't have done 4 months. So there you go. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute, because I think if the Democrats win the House and the Senate, you're fixing to see a lot more people being prosecuted again between 26 and 28. So that's some of the other big legal news that you don't hear unless you go look and find it, and then you'll see it. So that brings us to our update on the Iran war. This week, Trump scared me because Tuesday I got out of my car to go run in the afternoon, and he had given the Iranians to 8 p.m. to make a decision about a ceasefire. And when I got out to go run, I thought, when I get back in the car, what are we going to be faced with here tomorrow? The oil markets had jumped up to 113 in the last week for the price of oil. Gold was off the chart. The stock market was down. Gas is up to $3.77 a gallon, I think I paid the other day. And by the time I did my run, got back in the car Tuesday night, it had already been put out on the press. They agreed to a ceasefire. Now, everyone has their own position on this. They're even calling him Taco. Trump, what is it? Trump always cowards out. I think that's what it stands for. Taco. Trump always cowards out. Have you heard that? No, you're looking at me like I'm crazy. Anyway, chickens out. Thank you. Trump always chickens out. Thank you. See, that's why John's smarter than me. But maybe he was that blunt and maybe he was that direct to try to bring them to the table. Because you're not dealing with the average person on the street when you're dealing with the Persians in Iran. These are people that do not care. They're zealots. And within 24 hours, there was already words out that the ceasefire was not going to hold. It wasn't valid. Israel was still hitting Lebanon. And then they were saying that the boats weren't going through the Strait of Hormuz. And so it was all for nothing. I don't know how you negotiate with the Persians of Iran and think anything's going to hold. J.D. Vance, Kushner, and I think his name is Wyckoff, Trump's personal real estate lawyer, are gone to Islamabad to start having negotiations today with the Iranians. I don't know that much comes out of this. I don't know where we're going with this. You can make an argument that the United States military has been going nonstop for 4 or 5 weeks. So this gives us a little time to restock all of our supplies for all of our carriers in the Mideast. You can make the argument that this gives some of the soldiers some downtime to rest, to get ready for the next big push. Or you can make the argument that Trump is looking for an off-ramp, which I really believe he is, and he wants a way out of this. And, by the way, I told you this was going to happen. And it's already started. They're already leaking stories about who was in the room, who said what when they started discussing about going against Iran. And I don't know who's giving these details, but they are not helping the cause. They are hurting the administration. They're saying, well, Vance said this, and Rubio said this, and Hegseth said this, and here we go again. This is Trump 2.0. This is what happened in the first administration. For whatever reason, people on the inside want to go tell stories anonymously to the press, and then the drive-by media, the Democrats, the media that hate Trump, are using it against him in our own country. They're rooting for us to fail. They're rooting for us to fail, literally, with Iran. So here we go again. And I told you what was about to happen. He fired Pam Bondi a week ago. And now it was just put out this last week. Guess what? He was about to fire Tulsi Gabbard. Here we go again. What is wrong with Trump? For every time he takes one step forward, he takes two steps back. He's on a firing mission again, and he doesn't need to be doing any of this before the midterms. We're going to go to news and weather. We'll be back for the last segment. This is Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. We'll be back after the break.
You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Joe is a 20-year veteran of the Alabama courts specializing in criminal defense and family law. If you need a private legal consultation, email Joe at joeingramlaw.com. And now, welcome back to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram.
All right. You're listening to Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram, your Alabama lawyer. WERC, WBHP up in Huntsville, and WRTR in Tuscaloosa. This is the final segment of the week. We're talking about the Iranian war before the break. And nobody knows what's going to happen out of the mediation this weekend, but I think it is safe to say that whatever happens and whatever they agree to, the Iranians will not stick to it. They always cheat. They always cheat. You can't trust them. And I don't know what the big answer is there other than, man, it's just a bad situation all the way around, and there's no good answers to fix this. We got some numbers related to the economy out this week. Obviously, inflation rose like to 3.3% due to high gas prices and everything else. If this thing continues into the summer, Australia is already feeling the pinch related to gasoline and oil. Southeast Asia, all these countries that get their oil from Iran, they're talking about implementing work from home. People will not be able to fly for the summer for vacations. And here's something that really bothers me. When people say, well, this doesn't affect America because we are an oil export. If that were true, why did the price of gas go up at our pumps here in Alabama overnight? That's just not true, because the market sets the price for every commodity, every good, and every service in the United States and geographically around the world. So that's just not a true statement. And we got to find an answer fast before we get to the summer, because it'll be here before you know it. On the economical front related to jobs, all of big tech are cutting jobs. Meta, Amazon, Oracle, they are cutting. Oracle is cutting jobs. I think they cut either 30 or 40,000 jobs. And here's why. Oracle has bet huge on data centers, and they were in a cash crunch. So they said, well, we're going to fire people and we're going to bet on AI. So they slashed people and salaries and benefits in order to build infrastructure. So the news on the economic front is not that great if you're about to graduate and looking for a job this summer. I'm not trying to give you bad news. I'm just telling you what is out there and what we are facing. And and it's all tied to geopolitics and the Iranian war. We have some relief related to the TSA agents. President Trump signed some kind of executive order for funding to pay them, but we have not solved that issue. And I've been talking about this for a number of weeks. Well, now we're in the middle of April, and our buddy, the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jay Powell, is supposed to be gone in May. Well, he's not now because we haven't had the hearings. And even if we have the hearings, it's not going to matter because Tom Tillis of North Carolina says we are not going to put anybody out of committee from the Senate until you clear Jerome Powell of any improprieties, because the Federal Reserve is supposed to be above the fray. They're not a political institution. So we have put ourselves in a box. And by the way, Jeanine Pirro, who is the United States Attorney for the Northern District of D.C., came out right after it happened and said that she's going to appeal the decision. They're not backing down on that front. So we are still going to be stuck with Jay Powell. We are not going to have a new Federal Reserve chairman come May unless somebody changes course. Nobody's listening to me. Punt. Don't try to win every point. Let the issue go. Jerome Powell's gone. Let's get on with the government. But they're not going to do it. Anyway, that brings me back to the firing of Pam Bondi as the Attorney General. And I believe his name is Ted Blanche. He's the number 2 guy. He's been appointed as the nominated United States Attorney General in Pam Bondi's place. He's a very good lawyer. Trump has not nominated him to go before a Senate hearing committee. In fact, Trump hasn't nominated anyone. And here are the names they are floating. Jean Pirro, Trey Gowdy. I love Trey Gowdy. I don't know why Trey Gowdy would sign up for this because he knows at best it's a 2-year position. They're also talking about Trump's personal attorney, Alina Abba. I don't think she would have a chance because Tom Tillis sits on that committee too, and he said, quote, this last week, nobody that believed in the January 6th issue is a non-starter for me. So if you believe that Trump and the January 6th thing was okay and it shouldn't have happened, or that it did happen and it's okay, you're not going to be the Attorney General of the United States. So Alina Abba's out. I don't know about Jean Pirro, where she'd stand on that. Not sure about Trey Gowdy. I'm not sure I heard him respond to that specifically, that question. But out of everybody I've heard, I think Trey Gowdy would be the best. And here's why it's really important about the Attorney General for the next 2 years. Here's why. It's all politics. After the elections, in the event that the Democrats take the House and the Senate, specifically if they take the House, they are going to impeach Trump. It's just a matter of time. They're going to draft the articles so fast, man, you won't believe how fast they're going to pass the articles of impeachment. And if we keep the Senate, it's going to be really hard to remove him from office because you'd have to have 60 votes to do it. So that probably wouldn't happen. But if they get the House and they get the Senate, then Trump will be gone. They will go to him like they did to Nixon after Watergate, and they will make the same kind of statement. We have a cancer on the presidency, and you have to go. They will throw him under the bus for the good of the country. And make no mistake about it, folks, we were talking about it during the break. No matter who wins, no matter who loses, After 26, nothing's going to happen. We're at a stalemate. Trump is a lame duck. Congress has no incentive or initiative to work with Trump. Unless the House were to have the numbers in their favor for the House and the Senate, and then they could push forward their agenda on whatever they want to do, that is the only hope for the next 2 years coming after the midterms election in 26. So that's all the things that are at stake in the next coming months. So that's just something to think about. I want to go back to something about the Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. There has been so much said about, well, why are the ships not going through? I am told that roughly they're letting like 8 to 10 to 12 ships going through a day. Normally speaking, in the past, before this started back in February, it's my understanding that roughly 100 cargo ships a day traveled through the strait. So here's the issue. These cargo ships buy insurance, just like you have car insurance through State Farm, Geico, whatever. The insurance companies are telling the cargo ships, we are not going to let you go through, because if the boat gets shot out of the water, we're not going to pay for the cost of the car wreck. The only boats that are getting through right now are countries that are favorable to Iran, meaning China, maybe some Southeast Asia country, somebody that's made a special deal with Iran. I'm told they're taking monetary compensation for the cargo ships in cryptocurrency. And then I've been told that they want $2 million a ship to retain the strait when this is over. We can't let that happen, because if that were to happen, then for all intents purposes, we have lost this in an unbelievable fashion. And it's just a loss for the United States if they were able to start charging money to go through the waterway. Now, there's been some talk about they could build a new pass-through, but that would take money, time, and effort, and that would not serve any of us in the short term. So, lot to filter through there. We touched on this briefly. People are already starting to talk again in the Trump administration anonymously to the press. I don't know if that's because they're concerned about Trump and his personality disorders, his position that he can do whatever he wants to do in some form or fashion. It's not good for him that people are already starting to talk again. And I don't want to see it for the administration. I don't want him to see him fire people just because of his ego, Tulsi Gabbard. There's even been some scuttlebutt that if this Iran war turns out really bad, that Pete Hegseth will be thrown under the bus because he's going to blame him for it. And I could see Trump doing that. I really can. It's not a good look. Trump is one of these people that he demands loyalty from his people, and I understand that. If you have these type of positions, you serve at the pleasure of the presidency. You're there to carry out what he asks you to do in your official capacity in your position. But you also have to protect your people as well. So that's something to think about. If you ever watch the James Carville podcast, he is throwing around crazy stuff. He's talking about they're going to imprison Trump after the midterms in 26. And they're talking about not just putting him in jail, but his entire family. It's just some unbelievable things that are out there that could happen after the midterms. We need to find a resolution to this Iranian problem sooner rather than later for all of us financially. We need to do it for the midterms. We need people to get out to start spreading some good news of things that this administration has done. We need some positive news on the economic front, and we need some wins to go home for people to vote on right now. And right now, the news every day is just not that good on any front for anybody. So there's that. There has been some legal news this week in the state. There has been some, what would you call it? There's been some conversation about Tommy Tuberville, whether he is a resident of the state of Alabama. That's putting it nicely. Does he live in Alabama? Does he live in Santa Rosa Beach? I get to go to Santa Rosa Beach a lot when I have time off. All I'm going to say is I'm not in Auburn that much because I'm not an Auburn fan. How many people see Tommy at Starbucks on the weekend, for that matter, or his family? That's going to be an interesting story to watch after the primaries. Is Tommy Tuberville a resident of the state of Alabama? And I'm not making this conversation as a Democrat or Republican. I'm just throwing it out there because it's been in the news so much here in the last week that story has legs. And is it going to become a big-time political story after the primaries? That's something for everybody else to judge and think about. So, if you listened last week to our podcast with Barry Moore, he gave some very interesting insights, talking about the deep state in Alabama, and he referred to it as the Matrix. You can go Google this, and it's a fascinating read related to people that run Alabama Power and Alabama politics in Montgomery. It's called The Matrix, and it's the equivalence of what they call the deep state in Washington, D.C. I don't know if it puts you in the category of being a conspiratorial nut, but it's something to think about and go read if you're interested in that kind of stuff. If you listen to us the first hour, we talked a lot about cell phone searches and PFAs in divorce cases. I don't do a cell phone search in every divorce case right now. But if the client comes to me and there is infidelity at the start and it's a custodial case or it is tied to an alimony case, more likely than not, we're probably going to search the cell phone. And I had a case last year where we got it approved for the cell phone search. And we send somebody out to search the cell phone. And the person was they were in a facility, like a hospital. And the person was stopped at the door, and they said, "We're here to do forensics on a cell phone." And had to do a bunch of dance, walk around, talk, make sure they had approval to get in to do this. And finally, by the time they got in the room to do the cell phone search, honest to goodness, the person's cell phone that was going to be searched, they did a delete, where you delete your whole phone, you reset it, factory reset it, nothing there. All of that money, time, and effort spent to search the cell phone went down the drain. But here is the best part as a lawyer, because when I went to court a week later, do you know what my argument was? Judge, why would you factory reset your phone unless you had something on there that you didn't want somebody to see? And the judge looked at me, and the judge was like, "Judge's right. You're in the hospital. You're not in the best of health. Why would you factory reset your phone?" That was enough. Have you ever heard the old saying, "It's not the crime, it's the cover up the crime that'll get you"? Something to think about there. So anyway, fascinating stuff out there. Next week, we are going to be off. We're going to replay some good interviews of people running for offices. The week after that, we are going to have Jay Mitchell in the studio. He is running for the Attorney General as a Republican against Kathleen Robertson and Pam Casey. They are the three primary candidates for Attorney General. He's going to be in the studio with us. We look forward to that. It should be a good interview, and you'll enjoy wanting to hear from him. The interview last week with Barry Moore was really fascinating because you seldom get to talk to somebody in Congress that is as open as he was and as giving with answers as he was. That was really fun if you got to listen to that interview. I went back and listened to it just because he held nothing back, and he answered every question that we had, and it was a good interview for him. Next week when I'm off, I'm going to the Rod Stewart concert. For those of you out there that like Rod Stewart, this is his last go around. Rod Stewart, even at his age, for about 90 minutes, he puts on the best show you'll ever see from somebody that does concerts. He's phenomenal. Looking forward to that. The Masters is this weekend, folks, because it's springtime. Sunday, I'm going up to Huntsville to see Greg Gutfeld, Fox News. Greg's going to be in Huntsville this weekend. I'm getting to go up there and see him. He puts on a phenomenal show as a comedian. He is so quick-witted. He's like John. What is it? Is his name Dennis Miller, the comedian? If you are not fast, he'll just go over your head so fast you can't keep up. Greg's like that. Greg is a really funny guy. So if you get a chance, you need to go see Greg Gutfeld. He is phenomenal. And then after we get back after that and Jay Mitchell, we've got some guests that we are still trying to line up that are big names that I'm not going to say yet, because if I don't deliver them, I don't want to be disappointed. But we are working on some guests for you folks that will knock your socks off. That if we get the opportunity to sit down and talk to these people, you will want to listen to this broadcast, because it's very seldom you get to sit down and talk to somebody for 50 minutes and really you get to know them a little bit. And it's phenomenal interviews. I mean, if you listen to them, their personality really comes through, rather than in a 10-minute interview or, just a commercial on TV. When you get to spend 50 minutes with somebody, you really get to know them. And that's why we've done this for the elections. For you, the voter out there, you're the ones that are going to vote. You want to listen to these people. These are the people that run the state, and you want to know a little bit about them. You want to know how they think. And it's really important for all of us that live here in the great state of Alabama. As always, my buddy, my favorite guy I love to talk about, Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Bank. He gave his annual report this week. Guess what? He talked about Alabama. They are building, I think they've got 6 branches in the state of Alabama, and I think they're going to build up to 25 branches in the state of Alabama. He devoted 2 pages of his 50-page annual report to the state of Alabama. Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Bank. That's pretty impressive. That is the largest bank in the United States. They run the world. And he said phenomenal things about the state of Alabama. We've got a lot of good things happening here up in Huntsville that we talk about all the time, all the industries that are coming up there. So that makes me feel good living here in the state of Alabama. We got a lot to be proud of. And so if you get a chance, go read Jamie Dimon. Before we get out of here, final thought for the week. And this is something that's really important if you run a business. People talk about work-life balance. I got bad news for you. If you run a business or you're an athlete or whatever you're trying to do in life, I got bad news for you. There is no work-life balance. You have to be the extraordinary person in the room. You have to work night and day, day and night, until you achieve whatever level of success you want. So there is no work-life balance. Go have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Gotta go. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Don't forget to follow Joe's Legal Lowdown podcast on iHeart. If you need a private legal consultation, reach out to Joe on his website, joeingramlaw.com. Tune in again next Saturday for the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by any other lawyer.